In this video, we introduce Liger, a multi-paradigm visualization tool. Liger combines the visualization by demonstration and manual view specification paradigms in a unified visualization tool. Imagine Bob is interested in buying a car. He decides to use Liger to explore his options. Upon loading the data, the tool shows a bar chart visualization with the year attribute on the x-axis and the displacement attribute on the y-axis. Bob first wants to get an idea of the relationship between number of cylinders and miles per gallon. For that, he uses the manual view specification paradigm. He drags the cylinders and miles per gallon attributes from the attributes panel and drops them onto the x and y axis placeholders in the encodings panel. Bob notices that the average miles per gallon of cars varies according to the number of cylinders. So he decides to sort the bar chart to see which numbers of cylinders have the highest and lowest average miles per gallon. For that, he uses the visualization by demonstration paradigm. He selects the shortest bar and drags it to the extreme left of the bar chart to demonstrate his interest in sorting. This updates the recommendation panel based on the system's interpretation of Bob's demonstration. Bob accepts the recommendation to sort the bar chart by miles per gallon in an ascending order, and the system updates the bar chart accordingly. Bob realizes that there is not a straightforward relationship between number of cylinders and the average miles per gallon. He also notices that the average miles per gallon for 8-cylinder cars is lower than for other cars. This means that overall, 8-cylinder cars have higher fuel consumption. Because he is concerned about both his budget and his carbon footprint, he decides to filter out the 8-cylinder cars. Using the manual view specification paradigm, he selects the cylinder attribute and drops it onto the filter panel. The filter panel now shows the 5 values for the cylinder attribute. He excludes the 8-cylinder cars by deselecting this value in the filter that he created. This updates the overview of the filtered points in the filter panel and in the main view. Having worked with the bar chart for a while, Bob realizes that this is not a good visualization to look at individual vehicles. Thus, to reveal the relationships between other dimensions such as horsepower, acceleration, and cylinders, he creates a scatterplot visualization. He then drags and drops the horsepower attribute onto the x-axis placeholder. While low fuel consumption is important to him, Bob still wants some sporty aspects to his driving experience, and thus would like to exclude the cars with low horsepower. But before filtering out these cases, he first decides to explore a few of them to make sure that he doesn't inadvertently discard cars that he would like. He hovers over each car to show detailed information about the car on the attribute panel. Bob looks at the name of the cars and confirms that he is not interested in any of these. He selects some of these cars to mark them as not interesting to him. Then he demonstrates his interest in filtering the cars he selected, as well as cars that are similar to them, by dragging and dropping his selection of undesirable cars onto the filter panel. In response, the system recommends multiple filtering options to Bob. Before committing to a recommendation, Bob previews different recommendation options by hovering over them. The last recommendation catches Bob's attention. Looking at this recommendation, he notices that a set of cars that he selected to filter out have roughly the same displacement values, and that's why the system recommended filtering all cars with the same displacement values. After Bob accepts the recommendation, the system shows a range slider corresponding to the displacement attribute on the filter panel. Bob fine-tunes the filtering using the range slider to filter out cars with displacement below 120. Bob remembers a friend of his mentioning that Japanese cars have low fuel consumption. He decides to explore this aspect and uses the manual view specification paradigm to exclude non-Japanese cars by dragging and dropping the origin attribute onto the filter panel. The filter panel now shows the 3 values for the origin attribute. He excludes the European and American cars by deselecting these in the filter that he created. This updates the overview of the filtered points in the filter panel and in the main view. To get a better sense of what remains, Bob hovers over the cars. He particularly likes the 2 Toyota cars that have medium miles per gallon and reasonably high horsepower. So he uses the visualization by demonstration paradigm to color the data points red so that he can distinguish them from other cars. The system interprets his actions and recommends data attributes that can be mapped to color for all cars. While he didn't expect this behavior from the system, Bob is intrigued by the new recommendations that appeared. Thus, he previews the options by hovering over the recommendations. He decides to map the cylinder attribute to the color encoding. Looking at the visualization, Bob notices that apparently all 4-cylinder cars on the main view meet his requirements. Feeling confident in his choices, he decides to schedule a test drive for each of them.